Hello, thank you for being here. My name is Kaylee. I am a master esthetician, laser tech, makeup artist, and most importantly, licensed aesthetics instructor. Welcome to my channel. It feels so weird saying that. I'm very new to YouTube. The way this started was actually because, and I'm sure most of you have seen it, this is my most popular video. My first video that I posted on here was my state board practical prep. And when I made that video, it was just for my students at the school where I teach. But it was such a long video that I wasn't able to email it to them or send it in really any other platform. So I uploaded it to YouTube. And I could have made it a private page, but I decided to make it public and just see what happened, just in case I could reach someone else and help them. And it's basically like my wildest imagination came true. It has reached so many people. It's had, at this time that I'm filming this, it's had almost 800 views, which in the grand scheme of YouTube isn't a lot, but it's a lot to me, especially for a first video. I've gotten message after message, comment after comment saying, I passed my board because of you, my school didn't prepare me, thank you for uploading this, and just on and on. And I'm telling you, my heart explodes every time I see those comments and messages. So thank you so much. If I am helpful to you, please share that with me, because I'm telling you, it goes a long way. You guys' reactions is what prompted me to continue to post on this channel, and I know just how hard it is to find content about aesthetics. It's ridiculously hard, right? Especially finding it specific to your state, because a lot of videos are titled state board prep, but you don't know where they are, so you don't know if it is applicable to your scope of practice and such. So I remember being a student and struggling to find content and feeling ill-prepared at times. So I am just so glad that this has helped the way that it has. And I love teaching. I'm so passionate about helping people and teaching my students, and now helping other people in Virginia too pass their boards. So let's get right into it. How could I make a practical prep without making a theory prep to go along with it? So if you're here, I'm sure you already know that the state board exam for aesthetics in Virginia is a two-part exam. I highly do not recommend taking them in the same day. Just don't do it. And here's why I say that. The testing locations are likely going to be very far away from each other. So normally when you take your practical, you go to a hotel conference room. And then when you take your theory, sometimes it's at most recently for my master's, I went to an H&R Block. It was so random. But you go to like a testing center, just somewhere where they have a bunch of computers in a room, and you don't know how long it's going to take them to round up everyone else. The last thing you want is to be rushing from one exam site to the next and miss it and lose out on that money, because there's absolutely no refunds. So please don't take them in the same day. Real quick, if you haven't seen my practical prep, go back and watch that. It's the first video I posted. I talk about what to expect, what to wear, things of that nature. But today we're just going to talk about the theory portion. You do have to pass both exams with a 75% or higher in order to get your license. So let's get into it. So first I want to talk about a very important key that a lot of people don't even know about. They don't know it exists. So let's start from the beginning and I'll show you how to get here. So say we've opened up the internet. If you type in, and again, all my videos are specifically about Virginia, okay? So I can't speak to any other states. We type in dpor.virginia.gov up here. This is the DPOR website. So here's where you find out what they're looking for and find, most importantly, the candidate bulletin. If we go to boards over here, click that. Now, we don't have a separate section just for us that says estheticians. We're under the Board of Barbers and Cosmetology, so click on that. You scroll down to education and exams, scroll down again and find esthetician, and then just click on whatever language you plan on taking. It's going to open you up into a new tab, and this is the entire aesthetics examination candidate information bulletin, including theory and practical. So you can find the practical in here as well, but we'll just talk about theory. Before I get too far into it, I just want to say, because I feel like a lot of students don't know this or even believe that we're telling the truth. They think we're like withholding information, which, like, why would we do that? We want you guys to pass because it reflects on us and we care about you. Teachers and schools for aesthetics, we don't have any additional information from DPOR than this candidate bulletin right here. So the same thing that is accessible to you and accessible to the public in general is what we have to go off of as well. Plus, of course, our own experience having been to state board ourselves to get our licenses. As much as I wish they gave us more information, we don't have it and there's no way to get it. As far as the practical, I mentioned that in the other video, nobody knows exactly how they score except for the proctors. But with both practical and theory exams, I have a 100% pass rate with my students so far. So I definitely feel very confident in teaching. Anytime I've done a one-on-one with a student, they've gotten in the high 90s. I just had somebody that I kind of coached get a 97. With the theory, it matters with the practical what you wear, but with the theory, you can wear whatever you want, just not a big jacket or like a hoodie with pockets. Just like if you were going to college to a exam testing center, they're just worried that you have like cheating devices on you. So other than that, you can look any way you want. You can wear leggings, t-shirt. That's totally fine to be casual. There's no proctors there, okay? So there's no one from state board when you're taking your theory. You're just taking a multiple choice test. And that's something that's normally comforting to students too. Every question is multiple choice with 4 possible answers, just like a normal test. So there's no written portion, there's no essay questions, all multiple choice. And it is about 150 questions, give or take. It can be a little less or a little more, but around 150. Also, do make sure that you bring 2 forms of ID, and even don't worry if you don't have a passport or anything like that. What I did was bring my license and my debit card because they had my signature on there, so that's totally acceptable as well. And again, a lot of students don't even know this exists, and this is like your study guide right here. Starting on page 11 is your theory examination candidate information bulletin, and here they outline what's going to be on the exam. So 55% scientific concepts, 45% skincare and services, and what they don't mention here is that there is a small portion that asks state laws and regulation questions for Virginia, so we will go over those as well. What I highly recommend doing is printing these 2 pages out right here, so page 12 and 13. Actually 14 too, because they give you sample questions. So I would definitely make sure I know the sample questions, and then you have like an idea of the formatting of the questions too. But I like to print this out and make my own study guide by writing all these things down, and then underneath it going to that chapter and writing the information on what they're outlining, because they're basically telling you what to expect and what's going to be on the test. First of all, basic knowledge of microbiology, bacteria, viruses, parasites, and fungi. So this is going to be in your infection control chapter. And just to confirm, I'm sure most of your schools are using the Milady textbook. That's what my school uses. So infection control, if you're using the Milady book, is going to be chapter 5. I wish I could break it down a little bit more for you, but honestly, I highly recommend studying the entire chapter because it's all super relevant, and their number one concern is safety and sanitation. Okay, so they want you to know levels of infection control, sanitation, disinfection, sterilization. So remember, that is going in order from basically weakest to strongest. Sanitation is the lower level. Disinfection is the next one up, killing most bacteria. And then sterilization kills all organisms, including bacterial spores. Methods of infection control. And then apply knowledge of safety procedures and guidelines related to standard precautions. So standard precautions is whenever there's a risk of blood exposure, we wear gloves, essentially. So if we're waxing or if we're doing extractions mainly. Blood exposure procedures, so what to do if your client gets a minor cut. So this may involve having like a biohazard container and things like that. Safety data sheets, SDS, manufacturer's labeling. So this is normally with disinfectants and strong chemicals like that, where the manufacturer will send safety data sheets with it to know how to use them, and it also can come with products as well. You're supposed to have them on hand in your spa or in your school. And proper handling of chemicals. So as you can see, that's a wide array of things to know. So that really is pretty much all of the infection control chapter. So I really would study all of it, specifically these things that they name on here. Secondly, demonstrate a basic understanding of human physiology and anatomy related to cells and their functions, tissues, and they name the ones you need to know. So epithelial, connective, nerve, and muscular, organs and their function, skin, lungs, heart, etc., systems and their functions, so muscular, integumentary, nervous, endocrine, and skeletal. So this is going to be between two chapters, really. So Aesthetics Chapter 2, Anatomy and Physiology, and Aesthetics Chapter 3, Physiology and Histology of the Skin. In these chapters, we learn about so much. We learn about really the whole body in anatomy and physiology. And then Physiology and Histology is more skin specific. So I love this chapter. But for the test, you do need to know some of this chapter as well, where they're talking about major body systems, even if it doesn't seem like it pertains to the skin specifically. They just want you to have a good scientific understanding of the body as a whole. Physiology and histology, we talk about layers of the skin. That's going to be so important. If you need a good mnemonic, a way to remember it. So we have from top to bottom, we have stratum corneum, stratum lucidum, stratum granulosum, stratum spinosum, and stratum germinativum, which is also called the basal layer. And I had a student named Lauren once, and she says, "Can Lauren get some grits?" So that stands for those. So if you're thinking top to bottom, can Lauren get some grits? All right? That's how we remember. So definitely layers of the skin is going to be important, and we also want to know a little bit about what each layer does, and maybe other things that we may refer to them as. So for example, stratum corneum, that's our uppermost layer, the one that we can touch and see when we look at ourselves. That is also called the horny layer or horny cells. And like I said a second ago, the basal layer, which is at the bottom, is also called stratum germinativum. That's its technical name, and then basal layer is kind of just like an easier thing to say and refer to it as. And then it can be referred to as the dermal epidermal junction because it's where the epidermis connects to the dermis. You would also want to know the two main layers of the dermis as well. So we have papillary and then reticular, okay? And the dermis is where all the living functions happen. So that's where your blood vessels are. That's where the root of your hair begins to form. Muscular, of course, your muscles. Integumentary is your skin. Nervous is your nervous system, so your nerves and receptors. Endocrine is hormones. Skeletal are your bones. Demonstrate an understanding of histology and physiology of the skin related to structure and function of the layers of the skin. So we just talked about that. Structure and functions of the glands. Function of the skin. Remember, the skin has 6 main functions, 3 of which are listed here: protection, temperature regulation, and absorption. Don't forget your glands too, so your sweat glands, your sudoriferous glands, and then your oil glands or your sebum glands, which are your sebaceous glands. Don't mix them up, and make sure you remember what they do. Recognize and understand skin disorders and diseases. Luckily, we have a chapter called Disorders and Diseases of the Skin. Again, I would study this whole chapter because they list such a wide variety of things to know. So disorders of the sebaceous gland, examples could be acne, milia, and seborrhea. Disorders of the sudoriferous gland, hyperhidrosis, bromhidrosis, and anhidrosis. So hyper always means too much of or excessive, right? So oversweating. Bromhidrosis is the smelly sweat. My co-teacher says, because it starts with bro, think of it like your brother stinks, bromhidrosis. Anhidrosis, when you start something with the prefix a or an, it's kind of like anti, non, opposite of. So anhidrosis is not sweating enough. Contagious diseases such as bacterial conjunctivitis, that's pink eye, herpes simplex, and tinea, that's a fungal infection. Skin inflammations like dermatitis, eczema, and rosacea. Skin pigmentation, so hyper and hypopigmentation. The overarching category of both these things are called dyschromia, just so you know, and that's just any dysregulation of pigmentation. Hyper being too much, hypo being those white spots where pigmentation is missing. Skin growths, such as skin tags, moles, keratoma. Skin cancers, basal cell carcinoma, squamous, and melanoma. I would also definitely make sure you know what these look like as well. So basal cell is usually very oftentimes on the nose or on the face, but not always. A lot of times it looks like a pearly nodule with maybe a little capillary running through it. Squamous is more flat, pinkish white, scaly, and then melanoma, the most deadly and dangerous, is normally very dark brown or even black, and it has very irregular borders. And your book will show you pictures of each of these. You can also go on Google and to familiarize yourself with them. And then primary and secondary lesions. Your book breaks this into these categories as well and tells you which is which. Understanding the function and composition of the hair related to structure of the hair and its follicle, growth cycles, and abnormal hair growth such as hirsutism and hypertrichosis. So this would be in our book, Chapter 11, Hair Removal. They talk about the structure, function, and growth cycles of the hair. Something really important that's very often on the test is they'll ask you in which hair growth cycle is it optimal to remove the hair, and it's anagen. So we have our 3 stages: anagen, catagen, and telogen. Anagen is where the hair is actively growing. So if we pull it out when the hair is still alive in the follicle and actively growing, it's going to take longer for a new hair to form and come back. Whereas if we remove it at catagen or telogen, that hair is already on its way out and a new form is forming underneath of it, pushing it up and out of the follicle. So it won't be too much time before we start to see another hair in that same follicle. So anagen is the optimal time to remove. Hirsutism, that is where there is excess hair based on androgens. So those are the male hormones, but we're talking about women here. So there's too much androgens in the system and we get hair growth in a male pattern area. That's hirsutism. Hypertrichosis is just based on genetics more than anything, and that's just a general excess of hair growth, not necessarily relating to too many androgens. Basic chemistry. So we do have a specific chemistry chapter pretty early on here in the foundations section, chemistry and chemical safety. More specifically, it's going to talk about ingredients, labeling, function, and acidity and alkalinity. Your pH scale is going to be key here. So remember that it goes 0 to 14, 0 being most acidic, 14 being most alkaline, and then 7 is your neutral. Also super important to remember that the skin is slightly acidic at anywhere between 4.5 to 5.5. All right, that's super important to remember. That's why we say we have our acid mantle, and it's important to keep our products a similar pH to our skin so that our microbiome is healthy and flourishing and we're not having barrier issues, etc. So that is section 1, and that's not to say, so the test will be randomized. It's not like they're going to go through this in order. That's just the, the scientific concepts portion. If I could tell you exactly what was on the test, I would, or I'd love to, but it's all randomized. Everyone's test is different, but this is a fantastic guide to follow. Part 2, 45% skincare and services. So this is where we get into facials and steps of a facial and kinds of facials and kinds of masks and skin types and things like that. Demonstrate an understanding of performing a client consultation and documentation, so health history, intake form, consultation chart, physician release. Apply knowledge of client protection, so draping of the head and body. Skin analysis, Fitzpatrick types, conditions, and characteristics. Remember your Fitzpatrick scale, 1 to 6, 1 being the fairest, 6 being the very darkest. Everything else falls in between. You may also want to know what ethnicities or ethnic backgrounds fall into each category. Contraindications for skin services. That could be waxing or facials. So a good example, if somebody just had a peel, you wouldn't want to give them a wax. If they just used a retin-A last night, you wouldn't want to do too much exfoliation, etc. Treatment protocols, understanding of cleansing procedures, steaming procedures. It may ask you how far away the steamer should be from the client, and generally the answer they're looking for is 18 inches, so 1.5 feet. Demonstrate an understanding of exfoliation procedures. So know the difference between chemical, mechanical, and manual. Chemical would be your acids and enzymes. Mechanical is by machine. Manual is like physical, so like scrubs. Massage movements. Make sure you know effleurage, petrissage, tapotement, and friction. Methods of extraction. What to extract, what not to extract. And understanding of application of masks related to clay or mud, gel, rubberized cream, sheet mask, thermal. They may ask you something like, on what skin type would you be more likely to use a clay mask or like a setting, hardening mask? And that would, of course, be generally oily or acneic skin. Demonstrate understanding of the conclusion of facial, so moisturize, sun protection, home care, aftercare. They're also going to ask you basic questions like, somebody has an oily skin, what type of moisturizer would you use on them? And they might be looking for something like, of course this depends on what answers they give you as options, but like a hydrator, so like something lightweight. Basic understanding of electrical equipment used in skincare services. Demonstrate understanding of makeup as related to color theory, so learn your color wheel. Product selection, lipstick foundation, for example. Application, contour, highlighting, blending. Safety, so bracing around the eyes and lips. Infection control, when to use disposables, and disinfection of your non-disposable tools. And finally, demonstrate a basic knowledge of other services related to facial services, so aromatherapy, pre- and post-surgical medical treatment, ultrasonic, body treatments like body wraps, scrubs, and sunless tanning, eyelash and eyebrow services, lash and brow tinting, artificial lashes, lash lifting and perming, demonstrate an understanding of hair removal methods and procedures like waxing and tweezing, and wellness programs. Down here they have some aesthetic sample questions. I would get to know these and make sure you know the answer just in case any of these pop up. Something good is that not every single chapter in your Milady textbook is on the theory, if you notice. Milady has a few chapters in the beginning and the end of the book that are more Milady specific, like just general information they're giving you, but really isn't going to be important for the theory. So you can essentially ignore Foundations Chapter 1, 2, 3, and 4. Mostly, okay? So life skills, professional image, communicating for success, and the healthy professional. Because these chapters are very, like, common sense, how do you retain a client? Communication, that type of thing. And then again at the end, they have career planning, on the job, and the beauty business. These two you can mostly ignore. Okay, so something we haven't talked about are the state laws and regulations. There is a whole section about that too on the DPOR website. I'll show you how to get to it, but it's a big document and it's overwhelming. So I'm going to break down to you the most commonly seen questions about laws and regulations that I tend to see on the state board exams. So if we go back to the home page of DPOR as if we've just gotten on the site, go to boards, we're going to go back to barbers and cosmetology like we did before, but here's where it's different. Before we clicked education and exams, now we're going to do laws and regulations, go to aesthetics, and I like to do PDF so that it opens into a different tab. Alright, so this is a 37-page document. It's very dense. I do recommend reading it in full. It's not as bad as you would think. I have read this time after time. I'm so familiar with the laws. At this point, it's really not that bad to read it. They define business entity, credit hour, direct supervision, endorsement, so licensed by endorsement. Reinstatement and renewal, those are important to know. Here are some top questions that I find very commonly, okay? How often must you renew your aesthetics license? Every 2 years. Reinstatement is how you get your license back to effectiveness after the expiration date has already passed, whereas renewal is continuing your license's effectiveness for another period of time. So don't get those confused. An individual may only be given one temporary license, and a temporary license is valid for 45 days. You must provide a physical address to the board, not a post office box. And you must notify the board of address changes within 30 days. Now that I'm talking, I'm thinking of a couple other board questions. They may ask you, if you're a felon, how long do you have to report that to the board? And it's within 20 years. Something else you may see is that a spa has to conduct a self-inspection on an annual basis and keep it on file for 5 years. 5 years. Sorry about my dog. Last but not least, I want to put you onto a very helpful resource that helped me when I was in school and has helped a lot of my students. There is an app that you can get called Esthetician Exam Center, and this is what it looks like. Now, you can either pay about $10 a month for unlimited access to all their tests, or you can pay per practice test. It is a better value to pay the monthly subscription, get access to everything, because really, if you're just prepping to take your tests and you're at the end of your school journey, you'll probably only need it for 1 month anyway, so just a one-time payment of like $9.99 or whatever it is to have access to all these practice tests. And they're They're really accurate, they're very helpful. The only thing is that they're not specific to Virginia, so they're not going to ask you any state laws and regulations questions, but everything else is pretty spot on. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope this has been helpful for you. And when you take your theory and when you pass, let me know. Comment or send me a message. You can also find me on Instagram at what is my SD Kale. I forgot. On YouTube, I'm Instructor Kaylee. On Instagram, I'm SD Kale. And some of you have already found me on Instagram without me even sharing my handle, which I think is so cool and awesome. Again, just thank you for all the support. I am so inspired to continue posting more videos because of you. So good luck at your boards, and I love bringing new estheticians into the world. Go get it. You're going to do great, and I'll see you next time.